it turns out what happened is he was doing work in, I don't know, with a car or something. He got grease on his hands, didn't wash it, came into my house, sat on a white couch, realized he got it on the cushions. So he figured he would flip the cushion over. And I walked in as he was doing it, and we had to end up having to get the cushions replaced because he got grease stains on a white couch.
That doesn't come off.
No.
Yeah, that's not coming off. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show, one of our favorites of the week, the Sims Tournament Breakdown Tournament Strategy Edition. If you're wondering why Greg was telling me that story, because I was just telling him, and Jacob does a great job producing the show every week, that yesterday I'd given my dog one of those bones. Like, you know, they're called no-hide bones. They're like that big or whatever. And I'd given it to our locker in the basement so she doesn't go upstairs with it. And we come upstairs after I'm done all my shows, and I see her nose, like that leather-looking part, you know, is all red, like abrasion all over the nose. I'm like, you dummy. She didn't feel it. She's not hurt by it. I'm like, what happened? So then I figured I knew what happened. She takes her nose and tries to nuzzle the bone into the cushions of the couch. Well, I came back down last night to watch the football game, and there was just blood all over the couches. So I covered it up so my wife didn't see it, and was down here trying to scrub it off today, but also afraid to Google, how do I remove blood from my couches? So it's been an interesting morning, Greg. How you doing, brother?
How often does your wife go downstairs?
Not often at all, but it would just be my luck that she, you know, like it would have just been my luck that she takes my 3-year-old and is like, want to watch a movie in the basement tonight, which they do once every 3 months. You know what I mean? It's just, that's just the luck of the draw with that stuff. And, you know, we'll see. But I got it out. It's out. It wasn't like, it's not like dark, you know, it's not a crime scene, but it was just like from an abrasion, her trying to nuzzle it in there and moving the nose up. It's been a morning. Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. Hopefully you enjoyed that riveting game last night on Thursday. I'll say, clearly I know this because you already said as much. I enjoyed that game a lot more than you would have. Because you had no rooting interest. For me, it was ugly. I was very nervous. I wanted to cut Jake Elliott, which, dude, by the way, Jake Elliott legitimately could have been captain. Well, it would have been Barkley, but Jake Elliott would have been optimal had he not missed 2 field goals. And the guy left a full touchdown on the field yesterday.
Yeah, it was the dumbest thing ever because he was by far the worst player in the game, and he was good for DFS yesterday because he's still cheap and puts up like 8 or 9 fantasy points, whatever it ended up being. The most unjustified good fantasy game I think I've ever seen on a showdown slate.
What did he end up with?
I think he had 8 fantasy points. Maybe it was 9. I think it was 8 though.
Could have been a lot worse for sure. Anyway, glad you guys could join us. If you don't mind, be so kind. Take a single second, hit that thumbs up, atone for your sins. It goes a long way. It helps us feed the algorithm, and we appreciate it. So if you guys, like I said, if you've ever, you know, found use in this video, found these shows, the channel helpful, the smallest thing you could do is hit the thumbs up, subscribe. It's free to subscribe. If you ever decide you don't want to watch us anymore, just click on subscribe. And furthermore, comment, leave a comment down below. We appreciate all of that. It goes a very long way. When I said, you know, take a second of your time and be kind, it reminded me of the be kind and rewind thing. Do you remember going in the Blockbuster? Like we used to do it whenever we'd go down to the beach house, we would go to the Blockbuster in Ocean City, New Jersey, right, Greg? Right near the 9th Street Bridge. I'm not sure if you ever were an Ocean City, New Jersey guy. But right near the 9th Street Bridge, they had the Blockbuster. You go in there, you pick out a few good movies in VHS. You actually have the physical VHS. Look, am I saying I would want to do that again? No, but the nostalgia makes me think it was a great time. You know what I mean? Like there's a part of me that misses being able to do something like that. But then when you think about it, it was a miserable experience.
The other thing too that I did as a kid, it was that, and also renting video games from Blockbuster.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You rent video games from Blockbuster. And then you had the jerk offs who wouldn't rewind the movies, and you have to start and it's pretty terrible, but there's something that brings me back that I thoroughly miss. Anyway, hit the thumbs up. Let's make it happen. Happy you guys could join us this Friday. We're talking Sims here. We're going to look through everything the way Greg and I typically do this is first we already ran the lineups. We ran it with a 10,000. You could run 5,000 if you want to. That's pretty sufficient. Matter of fact, getting down to 1,000 even in a lot of these contests is just as good. But we're going to do that. We're going to favorite 150 of them just to give us a decent portfolio of lineups. And then we'll take a look at the lineups out of the gate, see if anything stands out. Hey, what do the stacks look like? Are we running mega stacks here, skinny stacks? Do we have a lot of run backs, double tight end lineups? Where's the value coming from? And then we sift through all of our exposures and stack exposures and all of that. Sound good enough?
Let's do it.
All right, Greg or Jacob, throw it up on the screen. Let's see what we got here. And of course, guys, if you want, you can always, maximize the screen, zoom in, whatever makes it easier for you. All right, so out of the gate, anything, I'll throw it right over to you. We've seen a lot of double tight ends lately, and it's actually been meaningful. We've seen double tight ends winning huge contests lately. There is not a ton of value on this slate. Few guys I want to dig into later on, and we'll get to them for sure. But once again, Greg, I'm seeing more of that today as well.
Yeah, right off the bat, the first lineup we have there, it's Brock Bowers and Jonnu Smith in it. And then you're seeing the second lineup there. It has Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. The third lineup, Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. Fourth lineup, Evan Ingram and Hunter Henry. And I'm sure there's more if we were to keep looking down. So it looks like your dog realized that we were telling the story about her. But yeah, lots of double tight end lineups right off the bat again. And it's been a better position as of late. Also, Mark Andrews is just underpriced. He's been all the concerns about him from the start of the year have kind of gone by the wayside. He's been a really good fantasy producer again as of late. And he is woefully underpriced at $4,600 on DraftKings and not popular either.
So, okay. Do we have Isaiah Likely out here?
Let's see.
Because if Isaiah Likely's out, that's going to change a lot. Like I wouldn't think Mark Andrews is that underpriced in this specific. See, Isaiah Likely's back. He's good to go. I don't love that. I still think Andrews is solid, but with Isaiah Likely returning, maybe Andrews just continues to evolve more, like we've seen in the past throughout the year. But I don't know. I don't actually know.
He was playing well even when Likely was healthy, though.
He was, but I'm saying, what should his price be with Isaiah Likely active?
Oh, to me, not that much different than what it was last year when both of them were there as tight ends. Like, you look at Mark Andrews now, he scored, 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. The only game he didn't score, they beat the Broncos 41-10, and they hardly threw the football, so only had 2 targets in that game. I think he's back to being, not the same as what he was before, but I think of him as one of the better fantasy tight ends in the league now again, and he's just priced like some guy.
I can get behind that. I have no problems with Mark Andrews there. The double tight end, I don't hate it, but I will say you and I built some pretty good lineups, I thought, on Wednesday in the single lineup show without the double tight end as well. So I don't know if it's a you could say it's a priority. I don't know how much of a necessity it is. Like I'm looking Tua +3, Geno +3. So triple stacks out of the gate. Brock Purdy double stack here. That's Andrews and Kittle. And I don't have a problem with that at all. What's crazy though, is looking at a lot of these tight ends, a lot of times it's one really cheap tight end. And in some of these, we're not looking at 2 dirt cheap tight ends like Bowers, Andrews, Kelce, Andrews, Kittle. So that's what makes these lineups more unique this week. I see a Davis Allen in there as well, and I'll be happy to get to some of him on, a cheap Jonnu Smith, but also two tight ends filling up some of these, tight end and flex positions where you're getting 11,000 in combined salary.
Yeah, and then also you look at some of the wide receivers who are priced in the mid-range, like Juwan Jennings or Jacoby Myers, who I think are for sure solid options on the slate, but I still think of them as comparable to guys like Travis Kelce or George Kittle, and that's who they're priced around as well. So if I had to make a choice in the flex spot, do I want to play Travis Kelce, or do I want to play Juwan Jennings? Do I want to play George Kittle, or do I want to play Jacoby Myers? I could totally understand why the Sims would lean towards the tight ends in some of those situations instead of the wide receivers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think ultimately you're going to have a little bit more value. I do think we will. I think we'll get some value that opens up. I want to, let's pivot off to, and for what it's worth, Greg, we've seen this now all season and much of last season too. You're just not, run backs aren't being forced nearly as much, and they don't need to be at this rate. I think there's a few spots that we'd be pretty happy getting run backs. I don't know you need to in all of these spots if you don't want to. Am I surprised to see the top lineup with Bowers as the run back? No, not at all. Or seeing, who do we have? Tyler Lockett as a run back in a Brock Purdy high-scoring game in the Brock Purdy stack? No. Bowers again in that Miami stack doesn't surprise me. But it's not a necessity. I'm not forcing that, whether I'm hand building or not. Let's take a look at quarterback exposures here. Well, stack exposures, Jacob, first. And just sort by QB +2. We're pretty spread out.
Yeah. And then not that we're there yet, but one thing that just really caught my eye right away, we kind of have a decent amount of triple stacks, but it's only one quarterback. There are two at triple stacks, and that's it. There's not another quarterback there's more than 2% of, which I don't hate, just because I really like some individual, the obvious targets for Tua for this week. I'm sure Achane is in a bunch of those lineups. Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, probably some Jonnu Smith at tight end as well. And then just because you have to assume Tua, the coaches have to be in Tua's ear and be like, hey, man, stop running with your head down. Let's throw the ball a little bit more and not take insane risk. Now, with that said, last week he throws an interception. He's diving head first to try to tackle somebody.
That's crazy.
And so maybe just a kamikaze and he can't help himself. But I think Tua, who is a somewhat mobile quarterback, but has always been a really high volume passer, I think they're going to prioritize him throwing the football and getting the ball out of his hands quicker, even more going forward, to limit the amount of hits he could take. So I think that the triple Tua stacks make a lot of sense. If I was making a triple stack with one QB this week, it would be Tua.
Oh, yeah, of course. And look, we liked him on Wednesday. We talked about him on Tuesday in the First Look show. It's also just easy to get there because Tyreek Hill, by the way, Tyreek Hill said he might undergo surgery on his torn ligament in his wrist, but it won't be till after the season. I'll be honest, I'm not too worried about it. I think he's still going to play, utilize his speed. They got nothing going on Monday, so I'm not looking at that really as an indication of what we see going forward. Now, if he sucks in this game and they go away from him, happy to reevaluate that, go back to square one. But you've got, Greg, you have Hill, you have Achane, who is, this is the thing why you're getting a lot of QB +3. It is so easy to stack Devon Achane with Tua. And he's right now, ahead of Alvin Kamara. He's the best pass catching back in the league. And you have Jonnu Smith as well. I don't know. You know what? Let me call an audible here, Jacob. Can we go to, let's just go to get out of stack exposures, go to all exposure. There you go. And then filter by Miami. Go filter by MIA. You can just use the filter.
Yeah.
Use the filter for me.
Oh, that works too.
That's fine. So 52% Achane, 30% Hill, 23% Tua, 23% Jonnu. All right, so Waddle is actually the odd man out here. So most of these triple stacks, which I'm not surprised by given the price of Jonnu and the amount of two tight ends, Jonnu Smith, Tyreek Hill, and Devon Achane. Not sure about you. I have no problem with that at all.
I would like a little bit more Waddle still. $5,900 to me is a really good price point on a guy in Jaylen Waddle who has massive PPR upside. We've seen games in the past where Jaylen Waddle is targeted 10, 12 times. I know we haven't seen that quite as much this year. Part of that is because of the injuries to Tua, so he's been capped at 8 targets is the high watermark for Jaylen Waddle so far this year. But you look at Waddle down the stretch of last season, I'm pulling up his numbers, where he had at least 8 targets, 5 games in a row for weeks 16 through 12. He had 12 targets in the game against the Patriots. He had 10 targets in the game against the Giants. So we had 8+ targets in almost every single game last year. And I do think that just some of the weird circumstances surrounding the Dolphins season has limited him a little bit, but now the price point has gone down as a result of that as well. So I don't have an issue with the Tyreek Hill exposure, the Achane, or the Johnny Smith. I would just want more of Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah, I think I would too. But I also don't, let me put it to you this way. I also don't care that he's my lowest exposed Dolphin.
Yeah, that's fair.
The truth is, has he had a single good game this season? Like a good game this season?
Let's see. He's only scored 1 touchdown, but this is insane. So the only game he scored a touchdown in this year, I don't even know how this is possible. He had 2 catches for -4 yards and a touchdown. So
is that really what he had?
Yeah. Game against the Bills, 2 catches for -4 yards and a touchdown. That's the only touchdown he scored this year. So he's not had a good fan. Oh, well, week 1, actually, he had 5 catches for 109 yards.
Okay.
Not like
and to be fair, Tua missed a handful of games as well.
Yeah.
So,
but other than the 109-yard game, he hasn't had a game that I'd consider one where he'd be like, oh, this was a really good guy to play in GPPs. At least not yet.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Well, let's talk about a couple of other things here. If we go back to stack exposures, Jacob, and then we can work through this a little bit further. So, all right, we have a good amount of Tua triples, good amount of Tua doubles. This is not something that I'm more. I like this for sure. 7.5 point home favorites against the Raiders. They need to run the table if they want to make the playoffs. I'm not saying it happens, but this is a great place to start after that big win against the Rams. Geno, we have a lot of Geno. I don't love Geno this week as much as the tools are giving us right now. I understand it's a high total game. They're likely playing from behind. He has really struggled against San Fran, so I'm injecting a little bit of my own thoughts into this, almost my own bias. He's 0-5 against San Fran for his career with double-digit wins and losses in almost every one of those games. There's just something I don't love about this spot. So am I opposed to getting him when you have, really 3 pass? What's Metcalf's status?
He returned to practice, and
I think he's good.
Yeah, we currently have him out, which we talked about this a little bit on Wednesday.
He's going to play.
Where, it's the situation with Geno is funny. He's not going to show up in nearly this many. Not that he's in a crazy amount. This is about 10% of Geno Smith. He's not going to show up in this much after our next projection update and come Sunday. Even though Geno individually looks better with Metcalf being in, he looks worse as a stack because of the fact that the targets get spread out a little bit more and Metcalf's really expensive. So one of the reasons we get to a good amount of Geno right now is because you've got an underpriced Jackson Smith and Jigba, an underpriced Tyler Lockett, and a potential value option, Jake Bobo, to pair him with. But once DK Metcalf is added back into the projections, Jake Bobo disappears as a value option. The projection goes down on Lockett and JSN. And as a result of that, there isn't nearly as much points per dollar value in stacking the Seahawks. And as a result, I would expect the Geno exposure to go from 10% to 3 or 4%. Something like that.
I agree. Good point. Yeah, context is necessary here now that Metcalf should be back. How about, I think just go to quarterback exposures for a second, Jacob. So click out a stack, because this is something Ben mentioned to me on the first look show, that he'd be willing to get to more Lamar if he wasn't popular. I just want to see what his Okay, so we have him at 4% ownership. That's why that exposure's up there. Ben kind of hit this one on the head. He really did. Just talking about Lamar's expensive. He's tough to get to. People will probably want to go to Josh Allen instead, which, by the way, Josh Allen's not all that popular against Kansas City. It really looks to me like, watch this, Jacob, filter by salary, highest up top. Check that out, Greg. Look at that. All of those guys are basically unowned.
And there's a big drop off in salary because Patrick Mahomes isn't an expensive QB anymore. It was something else that you and I were talking about on Wednesday, where for obvious reasons, Patrick Mahomes has been the most expensive quarterback, or at least one of the most expensive quarterbacks on every single slate for years now. On paper, yeah, he's the 3rd most expensive QB, but he's $1,200 less expensive than Lamar Jackson. He's $1,000 less expensive, or $1,200 less than Lamar Jackson, $1,000 less than Josh Allen. He's only $200 more expensive than Brock Purdy. So Patrick Mahomes is now being priced as if he's a really good, but not a great fantasy QB because he hasn't been one this year. So there's a tier of Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen that stands in its own in terms of pricing that's way more expensive than everybody else. And the field isn't playing either of them. 4% to Lamar Jackson, 4% to Josh Allen, even Patrick Mahomes, 4%. The only popular QB who has a price tag to him, it's Brock Purdy at nearly 10% projected ownership.
Where's Jordan Love, though? He should be. Oh, I guess just the fact that we're getting none of him, he's not popping up. So that makes
correct.
Sense.
Yeah. I'll go to the data hub to see what the.
He can't be more than like 2%. I can't imagine Jordan Love is popular whatsoever. So I'm not worried about it. But yeah, there you go. Look at that, guys. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. And then Jacob, sort by exposure. Let's see what the prices look like here. Tua at 6K, Purdy at 6,600, Lamar at 8K. So there's your Lamar. Geno, that'll come down 57. Stafford 7%. Mahomes is 6,800. Drake May even 4%. The one guy that I think I'd want to probably get a little bit, two of them, as a matter of fact, if you scroll down a tiny bit. Can you guess the two players I'd like to get a little bit more of in this spot?
By the way, Jordan Love 1% owned. So
okay.
I'm assuming you mean somebody who we're not getting to that you'd want more of?
Correct.
Russell Wilson?
He's one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be willing to take some shots. He's a little bit popular, more than I thought, but only 5%. That's nothing crazy.
All right. So that was the one I thought I'm going to get this. I'm positive I'm going to get this, actually. It's Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston.
You nailed it. But then let me throw the caveat in. Go to pool ownership, Jacob, and scroll to the top.
Yeah, Winston is the most popular QB on the slate.
If Winston is, in fact, the most popular quarterback on this slate, I have no problem getting, and I knew this. I said this on Tuesday, that he will be the chalk because it's hard to build lineups on this slate otherwise. If Winston is, in fact, and Greg, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, yeah, but 10% is not that much. And I would agree with you. I would agree. But go to wide receiver ownership.
Yeah, search Tillman.
He's right there. He's
okay.
Yeah, he's 10%. At 10%. What's Elijah Moore at? You can just try Moore. 9%. I totally with you that it's different than other sports where, like in baseball, a stack can be 40% owned. But if a guy like Winston is in fact going to be the highest owned quarterback, I'm not totally opposed to I'm not going to artificially boost him into my lineups just so I can get more of him, because he's the most unpredictable, enigmatic quarterback that you're going to find on a week-to-week basis. Truthfully, I might just go with more Drake May and go with a cheap stack there with a Kayshon Boutte and a Hunter Henry or Demario Douglas. That might just be what I get more of naturally with the Sims this week.
There should be an NFL rule that as long as Jameis Winston is an active player, a team has to start him, because he is, just because he brings excitement and action. You don't know if it's because he's going to be really good, really bad, but just stuff happens. He takes ill-advised chances. He throws the ball down the field. If you're going to have a mediocre guy quarterback, I would much rather be a Jameis Winston type than a Daniel Jones or somebody who's just kind of boring to watch. It doesn't really do stuff. Jameis Winston. There are not that many good quarterbacks in the NFL. I was thinking about this last night because I had people replying to me and saying, Jaden Daniels isn't any good. Jalen Hurts isn't any good. And I was trying to figure out who do people actually think are good quarterbacks? And then I started to think, who do I think are actually good quarterbacks? And you start to realize that football is the most popular sport in the country. If anybody could pick a position to play, they'd all choose to be quarterback. At the highest level, there's like 8 good ones, which is insane. That's how hard it is to be an NFL quarterback. And at least if you're going to get somebody who's middle of the road, who isn't great, make it a Jameis Winston type who's exciting. So anyway, to your point, really wide range of outcomes on Jameis Winston. He could be really good. He could be really bad. And you have no clue on a play-to-play basis.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, it is a very good matchup. Take nothing away from this spot. Because it's a good matchup, no doubt. Still, though, I mean, we're getting some Drake May, right? I think we are getting a little bit of Drake May here. What are the, okay, here's a fun one. This is why this show is fun. Jacob, let's go to lineups. All right. And then let's filter our Drake May lineups and see what they look like. Greg, do you think we're still going to be getting double tight end in all these Drake May lineups?
Well, Hunter Henry is going to be in a bunch of them. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews. That one doesn't is Curtis Samuel. Hunter Henry and Mark Andrews. This one just Hunter Henry and Travis Kelce. Hunter Henry, Travis Kelce. Yeah, almost all of them are double tight ends.
But here's the difference. They look like they're all expensive, at least one expensive tight end in almost all of these.
Yeah, it's not punt tight ends. It's just because the guys like Travis Kelce, there was a point in time 2 years ago where Travis Kelce would regularly be 8,000 plus. He was just as good as any wide receiver.
It was impossible to stack Mahomes each week with both him and Tyreek Hill.
Travis Kelce, just based on what his production and I don't think he's the same player as he was a couple of years ago, but I'm talking from a real life perspective. From fantasy purposes, the amount of targets he's getting since the injury to Rashee Rice are so insane that he is just willing his way, and the Chiefs offense willing its way for Travis Kelce to be a terrific fantasy performer. He has 12 plus targets in 3 consecutive games. If you are going to be getting 12 targets, it is hard to not have a good fantasy game, and he's not priced appropriately for it. So he is, to me, regardless of position, the or one of the best mid 6K options.
He is. He should not be this price with the amount of work he's been getting lately at all. Is it a great matchup against Buffalo? No, but I'm not actually sure it matters in this spot. The offense has struggled at times in Kansas City, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, Kelce at that price is underpriced. Hot Take Sports said Knicks and Goff are the plays. The problem with Jared Goff is they might score and he said they might score 40 points. Rance said that. They might, but it also might be like 2 for Gibbs, 2 for Montgomery, 1 for the defense, and then 1 for Jared Goff on 19 pass attempts. They're 14-point favorites. We saw what happened when they were favored. The Cowboys game doesn't even count because, Dan Campbell had a vendetta. But when you look at what they did against Tennessee, and it's only a 1-game sample, understandably, Jared Goff was a ghost because he wasn't needed. They were in great field position all game. They didn't even have that many total yards, and the offense did so much on the ground. I usually, and you guys know this, I typically don't get to a lot of running backs for Detroit because their prices are kind of prohibitive and, it could go a million different ways. I love Jahmyr Gibbs this week. I don't even hate David Montgomery. I think one of these guys could end up dominating. So, yeah, I actually like the run game more than I like Jared Goff this week.
Yeah, I mean, that game against here it is. The game against the Titans, they scored 52 points and Goff had 85 passing yards. That should be impossible. How do you score 52 points and your QB throws for 85 yards? He just wasn't needed. There's so many weapons on the offense. It happens to all of these guys, even Goff, where the Lions put up a bunch of points, Goff isn't involved. Lions put up a bunch of points, Laporta isn't involved. Remember earlier in the year, people were calling Laporta no good. Last year was a fluke. It's just there's so many good players on the offense. There's no way for all of them to eat every single game. 1 or 2 guys gets left out every single game, and it's very, very hard to figure out who it's going to be on a week-to-week basis. There's upside in all of them, but it's like rostering the Boston Celtics in NBA DFS. It's so many good players. You never know where the production's going to be. So individually, I'm going to be getting exposure to guys like Jahmyr Gibbs. I agree. He's my favorite overall guy on the roster, and I'm okay with some lineups with Jared Goff, but I don't want my slate to be made or broken by rostering one individual Lions player because there are other games too where, hey, look, we're at halftime and Jahmyr Gibbs has 3 carries because Dave Montgomery was playing well, or Amon-Ra St. Brown was getting open a lot, and it was just easy to find him. It's hard. It's hard to rely on anybody.
It's a difficult team to trust right now. But go to running backs. I bet this is the week where we're actually getting a decent amount of Gibbs. We are.
Yeah, 28%.
Okay, so talk to me about Breece Hall here. I'm still, I feel like every week I'm telling you that I'm going to negatively boost Breece Hall or cap his exposure. By the way, we're getting 10% Montgomery too. So this is a unique slate. Jonathan Taylor. All right, this is my question, Greg. And for you guys in chat as well. And for you watching after the fact. Should Jonathan Taylor really be behind Breece Hall at this stage? Like this far behind Breece Hall? Because the Jets have been catastrophically bad against the run. This game has a 3.5-point spread.
The one thing that scares me about Jonathan Taylor that was not a factor. So I'm going to answer this two ways. First, there shouldn't be this big of a gap between Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor, which is your overall point. Gap shouldn't be this big in terms of our exposures to them. And Breece Hall also shouldn't have, 7x the ownership of Jonathan Taylor. He just doesn't outscore him at a 7-1 pace. But with that said, here's one thing that makes me nervous about Jonathan Taylor that wasn't as much of a factor when we were doing the show on Wednesday, when we were trying to build some lineups with him. Quarterback change. Joe Flacco, who was supposed to be the QB for the rest of the season for the Colts, that lasted 8 days. And now he's not the quarterback anymore. It's Anthony Richardson. Richardson doesn't throw to his running backs in the same way Joe Flacco does. We saw at the start of last year, Jonathan Taylor was getting almost no passing game work when Richardson was the quarterback. That's a concern for me.
And that is the biggest concern for sure. So I have zero disagreement with you there. It's just one of these things where, okay, so like at what point do we call a spade here? At what point do we look at this team and you're like, they just stink? I think Breece Hall is a good play. I do. But I also think there are a lot. This is what I'm getting at. I also think there are a lot of very good plays at the running back position on this slate. Do I want a quarter of all of my running back spots being taken up by a 50%, right? So you have 2 running back spots. If you want to factor flex in, fine. But we're seeing that we're getting a lot of double tight ends. So we probably don't have a lot of 3 running back. Do we want to get that much Breece Hall when there are a lot of other really good running backs going in this week, like including Kyren Williams against the Patriots?
Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot of guys.
McCaffrey too. Yeah.
Yeah. No. He won't end up being in half of my lineups come Sunday. And another thing too is agreeing with what you said. Yeah, the Jets offense stinks. It's not any better with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback than it is with Zach Wilson. It's maybe marginally better, but they also have better weapons in the offense this year, like Devontae Adams added to the mix. Allen Lazard, he's been pretty solid when he's been healthy playing with Aaron Rodgers. But Rodgers is not good anymore. He hasn't been good for 4 years or something now. He won an MVP. Obviously, he was great his MVP season. And then he had a really steep fall off his following year with the Packers. He was at odds with the team. He leaves, he goes to the Jets. He tears his Achilles. And all of a sudden, there's this just assumption that the Jets offense is going to be great and Aaron Rodgers is going to be really good coming off a torn Achilles in his 40s when he wasn't even good his last year with the Packers. It wasn't to say that Rodgers couldn't have had a bounce back season. It just wasn't, to me, the most likely outcome that a guy in his 40s was going to be way better than he was at age 38 after tearing his Achilles. And it's something else that we've seen throughout the years that it's also really hurt the production of Breece Hall. Breece Hall's been terrible this year. He's averaging barely over 4 yards per carry. He has 100-yard rushing game. That's actually the only game he's even had more than 80 rushing yards. The only thing that saved Breece Hall from a fantasy standpoint this year is that he draws a ton of targets. A lot of it's because the Jets suck and they're always trailing, have to throw the ball a lot late in games. So Breece Hall is definitely somebody I want to be playing in DFS this weekend, but I'm not going to have him in half my lineups.
Okay, so then we're actually on the same page here. Like we're saying the same thing. Kyren, Christian McCaffrey, those type of guys, I would very happily want to get at least some exposure to. What about Nick Chubb?
So a couple things. First, he's in a great matchup. He's 6K, which seems cheap for Nick Chubb if you're just going based on name value. But it's not cheap for Nick Chubb if you're going based on what he's done this year. And it's only been a few games, but it's been bad. He's averaging 2.7 yards per carry. I'm okay with rostering him because of the matchup, but I don't want him to be a core option for me either because of the fact that a couple of things. Number one, he's been really bad this year. He's turning 29 years old in a few weeks, which is ancient for a running back. He's had multiple devastating knee injuries, last year being the worst one, not just that he's ever had, but one of the worst knee injuries I've ever seen in my entire life. He just wrecked everything in his leg. So you got this guy who's had multiple devastating injuries. Great matchup this week. Price point at $6K. Probably about fair to me. He's not going to be a core option. He'll be somebody who's in like 5 to 10% of lineups for me in all likelihood.
That's where I'm at. I think Swift actually is kind of enticing this week. Everyone's down on this team, but they have a good matchup against a run funnel Packers defense. Kyron looks pretty decent as well. You want to talk about wide receivers, or you got anybody else here that we should be looking at?
No, just want to reiterate, I'm kind of surprised that as of now, we're not getting Christian McCaffrey in lineups. I really think that's going to change come Sunday, and he's going to end up being more popular than what he's currently projected as well. But he's probably my favorite. I'll say Kamara over him, but Kamara 1, McCaffrey 2 of my 2 favorite running backs as pay-up options.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, if I'm not getting McCaffrey ends up being a guy worth boosting, put it that way. In the event that we're not getting it, like I'll probably apply a heavy boost there. Let's talk wide receiver. And by the way, guys, if you guys ever wanted to check these tools out for yourself, you know what to do, right? You've been with us long enough. If you're new, welcome. But the links in the description are right there. You could sign up the traditional way, get any package you want, the essentials package, the basic, the core, the max, or sign up with any of our sportsbook partners on that first link. Like, you click that link. This is as simple as it is. You'll see 4 steps. And by the way, this gets you the core package for the entirety of the month. That's $100 value, right? $100 value includes the sims, the single lineup sim where you can build the lineups by hand and get instant feedback as we run those simulations for you. Ownership, player projections, top stack, boom bust tool. And you know what the best part is? You're going to build better lineups. Take a peek in the chat once in a while when you watch these shows. You'll see the guy. I don't have to tell you. They'll tell you. They started using the sims and they built better lineups and totally refined their process. That's why we have them. That's why we do this. And we love seeing those stochastic avatars at the top of the leaderboards every Sunday. Prefer it was mine, but if it's, or Greg's, or I prefer it was mine. If it's not, I prefer it be Greg's or one of yours. Any of you guys watching, because that's worth celebrating. And if you haven't done so, scroll down. You'll see claim offer. All you have to do is click claim offer on any of those, right? Literally, even if you're in non-legal betting states, you have Better, you have Sleeper, you have Underdog, Prize Picks. Or if you are in betting states, Bet365 has $150 bonus bets released as soon as your first bet settles for just betting $5 and depositing 10. BetMGM, that's going away soon, but $200 in bonus bets when you sign up and deposit 10. And like I said, you're getting all the bonus bets there. Just sign up, deposit, takes a minute to get verified. Place your first bet. Once it settles, all you have to do, email us, support@stokastic.com with a screenshot of your welcome email and your first settled bet, and you've got the free month of Stokastic Core, $100 value on your way to building better, more profitable lineups and seeing that bankroll increase. And guess what? Don't tune out yet. If you were to sign up on 4 of these, that's 4 individual months stacked on top of each other of any sports you want. So never done anything better than this. Take advantage of it. Links in the description, first one, and in the chat as well. Also, Greg, I know you wanted to hit on it quickly, but you're a big MMA guy, and we've got a little something going on for the people.
Yeah, so right after, well, not right after this, but shortly after Loughran and I do this show, I'm going to be recording my MMA show for the weekend. Really big MSG card this weekend. John Jones making his return, potentially his final fight. And yeah, right after weigh-ins, I'll be recording my video, just making sure that nothing gets changed, because there are times where I've tried to record the videos too early, and then a fight that's really popular falls out because somebody misses weight, and then I feel like all the ownership I talked about was a little bit off. But after weigh-ins, I'm going to be recording my video, and one of the things that we have going on for this weekend, just $1 to sign up for our MMA core package. So if you guys are looking to play MMA DFS, $1. You get access to our single lineup sims, our fighter projections, our fighter ownership, all of that for just $1, promo code BONES. But the link in the YouTube description box down below, it already has the promo code loaded in there. So if you're going to be playing MMA DFS this weekend, sign up. It's just $1. And then honestly, even if you weren't planning on playing MMA DFS, Try it out. I think that MMA is actually the most fun DFS sport to sweat just because every single fight has such big implications on the outcome of the card where if you have somebody you've rostered, obviously you're rooting for them to win and you want them to score big. But even in a fight you don't have exposure to, you're actually watching it and rooting for nothing to happen, which is also kind of an interesting way to sweat out some DFS. So check it out. If you guys are playing MMA DFS, you definitely want to take advantage of this. And if you weren't, you probably should be playing MMA tomorrow anyway. Just $1, promo code Bones, link down below in the YouTube box.
Yep. Don't even need to use the promo. Just click it. The auto load for you. Simplicity at its finest. All right. Wide receivers. Greg, have you looked who our highest exposed receivers are? Well, now we have it. It's fine. Have you looked at, though, outside of Tyreek Hill, who's a pretty obvious one?
I have not. I mean, I'm assuming just based on running them the other day that Shakir is going to be somebody who shows up a bunch, but not sure beyond that. But Shakir also makes a ton of sense.
I have not looked either. So you go Shakir. I really thought it'd be like potentially some of the like Keyshawn Booty or like the value from New England, because the guy's on the field every single play at this point. Shakir's a great answer, though. It might just be spread out besides that. Let's see it, Jacob. Let's see. What do we got?
Yeah, you also have to think the QBs we got exposure to. So one of the things that's going to be towards the top that isn't going to be the case come Sunday anymore is guys like
Lockett.
Lockett, Jake Bobo, Jackson Smith, and Jake. Lockett's not even really there. We only have him in 6% a lot.
Oh, Keyshawn Booty is there at 29%. Yeah. I had a feeling. And Khalil Shakir, you nailed it. He's number one. Lot of him against Kansas City. Are you on board with that much Curtis Samuel? Because he actually played a lot last week. You know, the reemerge. They exhumed his lifeless body from his corpse from the grave and brought him back to life. Greg.
Yeah, his role has been really bizarre to me all year, mostly because he was a free agent acquisition. They paid a decent amount of money for, while they were also shorthanded at wide receiver, and then they just never utilized him for whatever reason. He had the 8 targets last week, didn't do shit with them. He had 4 catches for 35 yards. The volume was definitely encouraging. I like him a ton as a value option. $3,300. I think he's probably the best overall wide receiver value because there is a chance he gets 8 targets again from Josh Allen. I am a little bit concerned, though, that was the only time he's gotten volume remotely close to that all year, so it could have just been a one-off occurrence. Now, with that said, Dalton Kincaid is banged up, Amari Cooper is banged up, and maybe they just don't have other options other than Shakir and Samuel to throw the ball to. Because of his price point, yeah, I'm going to be getting to him. There's not that much opportunity cost at $3,300. I don't know that he would be in half my lineups, though.
Probably not, but he was on the field a ton. Now, this is also working under the assumption. Let me just make sure we're on board here or on the same page. This is also working knowing that we don't know Amari Cooper's status. If Amari Cooper plays, all of this, I think, looks way different. Like, we would still get Shakir because there's just no way that Dalton Kincaid is going, unless he somehow is a full participant today, but that seems highly unlikely. Keon Coleman's already been ruled out. But, I mean, Greg, if Amari Cooper ends up being active with no limitations, that throws a real wrench into the works.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing, too, about some of these cheap wide receiver exposures, we don't have that much of Jake Bobo. He's in 14% of lineups, but he is absolutely going away on our next projections update, which will actually probably get us to even a little bit more of guys like Butte, and I don't know that we get more of Curtis Samuel that we currently have, but we would probably get to more of Butte there.
We would definitely get more. Yeah, Keisha, the disappearing of Jake Bobo and maybe Samuel if Cooper plays, Keyshawn Booty will be more popular. Probably guys like Demario Davis too. You're just going to get some, maybe, you know what, maybe even more guys like Elijah Moore, who's pretty cheap on top of that. So, yeah, we're going to see how this plays out. Right now, I'd say temper expectations. Just look at this as kind of guidance because by Sunday, we're going to have more news. I expect Metcalf to play. I actually have zero read right now on Amari Cooper. I don't know. If he practices fully today, he's playing.
Yeah, he said that he's confident he's going to play, but that doesn't mean that much to me. I've never seen an interview with an injured player where they ask their status and they've delivered a negative report. They're always more optimistic than not, and almost always we've seen players who are out for 6 weeks who think they're going to return the next
all
game.
the time.
So it's going to, I agree with you. I don't know what to expect from Amari Cooper. Clearly, if he plays, it's much worse situation. Curtis Samuel goes away almost entirely. And then Khalil Shakur, still solid at $6,300, but just as a guy on the slate, he would no longer be a priority. I think it's reasonable that we don't have Amari Cooper in our projections right now, but it's definitely one that needs an update.
Yep. Zay Flowers, we got a decent amount of. But this will change. If it ends up changing, you're going to see. Do you see? I mean, we already have a lot of double tight end. Mm-hmm. So I think it just results in more. It's going to result in more cheap wide receivers. Because Jacob, if you go to running back, how much Audric Estim do we have? 6%. I'm looking at all of our highest exposed running backs. They're all expensive. Montgomery's mid-tier. Even Kyron Williams and Taylor are the next highest exposed. I think you see what I'm getting at here, Greg. Like we're not pinching pennies at all at running back. It's going to be wide receiver, which is going to kind of dissipate if Metcalf plays, even more if Cooper plays, and then go to tight end. That sets us up perfectly to talk about tight ends here and see what that looks like.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk much about Estim at running back, and I'm kind of happy you doubled back on him because he's the only cheap running back who's currently viable on the entire slate. I just going off pricing from the top of my head, I don't think there's a single guy I like at all on this slate who's sub 6K. We were liking him on Wednesday when we did the single lineup sim show, and I still like him today, but he doesn't really show up in that many lineups because we have this wide receiver value available to us. If these guys fall by the wayside, if Cooper plays and then Samuel and Shakur look worse, and then we know that we are likely not going to have Jake Bobo or JSN or Tyler Lockett available as other value options, we become really starved for value on the slate. And then all of a sudden, Estim probably shows up in a bunch of lineups.
Right. If Estim shows up in a bunch of lineups as a result of those guys, I'm not going to love that, but I'm not sure what the alternative is really.
Got to save salary somewhere. And then as far as Estim goes, I see some people bringing it up in the chat. And yeah, Miles Westfield saying that Audric is a smash. Casimir saying, are we not playing Estim? I'll be playing Estim. How much of him is going to depend on what happens with these wide receiver values. But yeah, Estim at $4,500 is the best cheap running back on the slate. And it seems he's locked into, well, I don't want to say locked into. He appears to be the front runner going forward to be the number one RB for the Broncos. Javonte Williams was essentially the third running back last week. He was behind both Estim and McLaughlin. And Estim by far got more touches than Williams. I think it was 14 carries to 1.
Yep, it was. The question now is, do we trust Sean Payton? And I don't know if the answer is yes. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I have some concerns. For what it's worth, though, when I looked at it last, Estim had a rushing prop around 60 yards. That's very high for a $4,500 price guy. Also, probably not going to be involved in the passing game. It looked like that was still mostly Williams' job and McLaughlin potentially as well. So you even at 4,500, you're still probably going to need him to score.
Yeah, he's touchdown dependent to be in a winning lineup.
Definitely. All right, so Kelsey, Andrews, there's Davis out. You know what? You don't have to love it, but Davis Allen's workload last game on the field the whole time, running routes on 90% of dropbacks. He is a necessary evil at $2,500, especially if he's only 15%. That might sound like a lot, but it's not for a $2,500 tight end on a week where you've got a lot of really good expensive options. Jonnu Smith, Kittle, Hunter Henry. I'll tell you what, I have no pushback really on any of this. I think all of these guys at their respective price points and ownership look perfectly fine to me.
Yeah, Davis Allen, especially once again, to bring up the talking point that we just had about Estim. If we're going to be losing wide receiver value, well, then there aren't cheap wide receivers to roster. Then guys like Estim at $4,500, Davis Allen at $2,500 become the places we need to go to save some salary. So Davis Allen, who has slowly been more and more involved in the Rams offense and now appears to have leapfrogged Colby Parkinson on the depth chart. He's not priced correctly at $2,500. This is probably the last time he'll be this price point the rest of the season.
Yeah, probably 3,500 next week. Even if he sucks this week, he's going to go up in price a lot. That's just the way the algorithm works on these sites because he'll get ownership, you know. Defense, if we never look at defense, but it has to be all cheap ones, right?
Yes.
Yep. As expected.
Yeah. Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, Seahawks. And you're not going to feel great about really any of these defenses, but the scoring is so random for defenses anyway. I mean, the big defense games last week, it was the Bills against the Colts. It was the Patriots against the Bears. And the Patriots, what were they, 2,600 or something last week. They were also one that we were rostering a lot of when you and I were building lineups in the single lineup sims last week. I'm more often than not just playing the cheap defenses and hoping for the best. It's all random scoring.
It's completely random. And actually, there's good cheap defenses this week, so I'm not worried about it. Hey, an interesting comment in chat that we can wrap things up on from Reese. He said, not seeing any knocks. Yeah, you know what? Dawson Knox ran 25 routes last game. Kincaid ran 10. He's not going to be on the field. Well, we don't expect him to be on the field. Knox is not he's $1,000 more expensive than Davis Allen is. But you know what? Yeah, Dawson Knox, if you go to tight ends, do we have any Dawson Knox here?
And by the way, we do have Kincaid projected out for this weekend. The one thing that hurts Dawson Knox, this doesn't seem like a big price tag, but him being 3,500 instead of the Davis Allen sort of 2,500 price tag, it is a little bit of an issue for Knox. Instead, we end up getting to other comparably priced tight ends who I do think are better overall, like Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So I would be okay with some Dawson Knox lineups, but there are other tight ends I prefer.
Has been a Kansas City team that certainly struggles against the opposing tight ends, though. Definitely has. Knox is at the very least interesting here. I'll tell you that. He's at the very least an interesting option in this game. And he's cheap. He's not as cheap as you'd want because you have Jonnu there, you have Allen below him, and Andrews isn't that much more expensive. But if all of those guys are out, Dawson Knox becomes your primary pass-catching tight end. And we've seen him do it before. We've also seen him get some work in the red zone. So not totally opposed to it. Anything else you want to look at before we get out of here?
No, just a lot of moving parts still with the injury news. So you guys know, just keep up to date with the injuries. Come Saturday night, you're going to get the drop of the Rappaport, the Schefter tweets, who's in, who's out, and that's going to have a lot of movement on some of the ownership and our projections.
Love it. Hey, appreciate you guys hanging out as always. Come join us. If you do pop in, head over to the Discord. Also, one more thing, if you guys don't mind. I just put out a video over on OddsShopper. I think you'll really appreciate it. Essentially, the future of sports betting is here. Would love for you to check it out if you don't mind over on the OddsShopper channel if you enjoy sports betting. If not, don't worry. Or you just want to say, you know, I'll do him a solid here. I'll help him feed the algo. You'll see it right there. It's the we finally cracked the code video. If you do that, let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. Appreciate that in advance. Greg, anything else before we go?
No, that's it. If you guys didn't do it yet, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you do take advantage of any of the offers, like the $1 Bones deal, make sure that you join our Discord channel. Oh, one other thing that we forgot to mention. Today's the final day for the $1 sale on the OS Portfolio V tools as well. So if you guys want to bet with us, just $1 for that as well. The promo code is Bankroll. I've been doing content on Twitter where I started the NBA season with $100 and have just been tailing the bets and the bet size recommendations, specifically from OddsShopper, and then posting the results as we go on Twitter, and have nearly tripled the bankroll in less than 3 weeks. And then also Loughran just put up a really good video about why the tools are valuable and some information on how to use them. And I included that in my thread today as well that I have on Twitter. So go check that out. Check out Loughran's video, check out my thread, and it'll give you a really good idea of what Portfolio EV is and why you should be using it.
Yeah, man. Promo code Bankroll first week for $1. CG, thank you. CG in chat said that video is fantastic, Laffy. Thank you. Yeah, and check out Greg's thread, all that good stuff. Appreciate you guys as always. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here. Greg, myself, Ben, Eric, Matt, Sunday morning. It all culminates with a 4-hour live stream heading into week 11. Until next time, make sure to return tonight. Deeper dive live before lock for NBA. Peace.